Hi, I'm Andrew. This is Blaster Breakdown. Today I have something really special to share. This is Naroda's Bullpup. It's a fully 3D printed, semi-automatic, bottle-on HPA blaster featuring Spectre's Supercore. With the air bottle and regulator attached, it does not require a remote airline, and so it's fully self-contained. This blaster was designed by Naroda in the Netherlands and printed by Aureum Locus in Canberra. I'll link to both of those in the description below. The white and orange parts are printed in PLA, which I've given a coat of 2K clear paint to keep it looking new. The black handle, mag stop and butt plate are printed in carbon reinforced nylon for a bit of extra strength. The Supercore sits in the back section, and I'm very pleased to have one from the very latest batch just released by Spectre as of early June 2020. There's a 350mm Monkey Mods anodized barrel and a Blastertech scar up front. Dean printed this one in white, especially for me. Down here we have an Empire relay adapter as a second stage regulator fixed to the bottom of the handle. This holds a 13 cubic inch 3000 psi bottle underneath the hand grip. Because the Empire relay is adjustable, I can dial the inlet PSI up or down to get the FPS I want for any given event. Today I'll show you how I assembled this blaster from its component parts and how the pneumatic components fit together. Let's have a look inside. And here we have all the parts laid out, fully disassembled. The main body of the blaster, of course printed in PLA, the hand grip, butt plate and mag stop in black. They're printed in carbon reinforced nylon. The foregrip and the Blastertech scar, it's an adjustable scar of course, printed by Dean at Blastertech. All the white parts look nice and shiny. I've given them a coat of 2K clear paint for protection. And here we have the star of the show, brand new Supercore built by Spectre, number 046. I've got another video here explaining how the Supercore works. If you want more details, you can have a look at that. Briefly, when the core is pressurized, the pusher chambers the dart into the receiver, which is attached to a barrel. And when you pull the trigger, it dumps the air forward, firing the dart through the barrel. The Supercore sits in the rear of the blaster like so, right behind the magazine well, with the receiver just in front. And to get the air to the back of the Supercore, I've got a 6mm hose that runs through the inside of the blaster and around the magazine well. And the MJV03 valve sits inside the hand grip, and that's activated by the orange trigger. When the valve is closed, that begins to vent air through these little holes, and that drop in pressure is what causes the quick exhaust valve at the back of the Supercore to flip, firing the dart. The Empire relay regulator attaches to the base of the hand grip using these mounting holes. And it requires an adapter. This stainless steel piece here, this is manufactured by Spectre, and that allows a standard push fit piece to screw into place. Now the correct way for this to be oriented is with the female thread facing forward, of course. That's where the bottle is going to sit, underneath the barrel. The lever on the bottom lets you pressurize or depressurize the system, and the socket in the end lets you adjust the PSI. Now with the white handle attachment piece, I found I had to grind out a little bit to make some space for the roundness of the adapter piece. but then it just snaps into place like so. This is held in place with two M5 30mm screws. The body of the blaster is made up of three main parts. One holds the supercore in the back, one holds the receiver and barrel in the front, and then the magwell in between. You can see here the M3 threaded brass inserts that Rick put in for me. And the magwell has a lever, of course, to hold the magazines in place. To hold these three parts together, I used super strength 3-day epoxy along each of the seams all the way around. And that holds everything together really firmly. The magazine release lever has a spring on the inside. I think this is a Retaliator catch spring, and is held in place with a pin. Again, I think this might be a Retaliator bolt sled pin. But I definitely recommend you put this together before you glue the magwell in place. Don't do what I did. It's a giant pain getting it back in place afterwards. At last it's done. That took me about 5 minutes off camera to get lined up just right. And I'll test it with a Talon mag, and yes, the lever's holding the magazine in just nicely. Okay, so the black grip attaches to the base with the Empire relay and also holds the MJV03 valve in place. I had previously assembled this, so I know I've got the right length of 6mm hose. And when that's sitting just right, I can attach the hose to the push fit in the base. I had to use needle nose pliers to ensure that the hose was connected correctly at the base there. And there's a single M3 12mm countersunk screw inside the handle, and that's a real pain to do up as well. You can really only do a sixth of a turn with a regular Allen key because of the shape of the handle, so that took me a while again off camera. So that's most of the pneumatics taken care of. The longer hose passes through the inside of the blaster and connects to the supercore at the back, but we can test that now to make sure there are no leaks. And when I flip the lever, we should see the supercore pusher extend. Nice. And that would extend into the receiver through the top of the magazine. And I'll test it a few times to make sure it's firing nicely and there are no leaks. There are two holes on the underside at the front here. The first one is for the valve stem to interact with the trigger, and the second is to take the 6mm hose through the body of the blaster. And I'll feed that through the magwell until I've got the stem lined up with the hole, and then just carefully fit it in. And then the holes in the black hand grip should line up with the brass inserts on either side. And we can see the hoses passed through the magwell at the back of the blaster. There are two M3 8mm countersunk screws that hold the handle in place either side. Then there are two M3 16mm countersunk screws, and these attach the inside of the front edge of the magwell to the white bridge piece that holds the Empire relay. And being countersunk, they sit nice and flush and don't obstruct the magazine at all. This front underside piece holds the trigger. It just slides in like so, and it requires a return spring like this, and that fits into a slot in the handle. It's easiest to put this M3 12mm thin cap screw before you slot the piece into place. And just need to line the spring up so it sits on the knob at the end of the trigger. And that fits together neatly, and you can feel the trigger should press the valve stem in the handle. And using the second hole in the top here, you can tighten up that screw that we put in place earlier. And that should be nice and secure. I just found out that the brass receiver that comes with the latest batch of Supercores has an outer diameter exactly 20mm, but the aluminium one that came with the previous batch is ever so slightly undersized, a fraction of a millimetre thinner. Because I'd already glued the two halves of the main shell together, getting sandpaper in to make a bit of extra space was going to be too difficult, so I used the original aluminium one that I'd had in previously. Now I can insert the threaded barrel. It's got two white spacer pieces at the front and an orange one that goes in the end of the shell there. I really didn't need to thread on these pieces before I screwed it in place. That's just something I'd done with the previous barrel that already had a scar attached that I didn't want to remove. So don't do what I did here, screw the barrel in first and then add the spacer pieces after. There's a hole for a grub screw to hold that orange piece in. I haven't bothered with that. It's a pretty tight fit and I'm not worried about that coming loose. I know the receiver holds the barrel in place really well. And now is when you should slide on these pieces and line them up with the holes in the underside. And through the Picatinny rail on the underside, two more M3 12mm thin cap screws attached to each of these spaces. There are grub screws on either side of these barrel spacer pieces. I haven't bothered tightening them. Again, they hold the barrel quite firmly without further tightening. The top Picatinny rail is in two pieces. The shorter one goes at the back. It's got these holes that go over the thin cap screws that hold the receiver and barrel in place. And an M3 12mm thin cap screw holds that in place. The front part of the rail uses three of the same screws to attach it. And the blaster should feel nice and sturdy, nice and firm all across the front now. And now for the Supercore. There's a beveled ring piece that sits at the front of the Supercore and a rear spacer. These both ensure that the Supercore is oriented correctly. If we look in the magwell, we can see the hose is being pressed down by the receiver. We need to pull that out to one side and make a bit of a loop. I've got a right-angled push-fit piece attached to the back of the Supercore and then another right-angled stem piece attached to that. I know my hose is the right length, so I'm going to attach the stem piece first, just for ease of further attachment to the Supercore itself. Getting the length of hose right is a matter of trial and error. You want to have a little bit of slack at the back. Of course, probably best to leave it longer than you think initially and trim it down to fit. I think I've ended up with about 1 inch of slack protruding out the end, and that allows me to connect the push fits together. The hose will slacken in the magwell as you push the supercore forward. And when this rear spacer piece fits flush, you know that the supercore is in the right position. Here we can see the pusher and the receiver lined up perfectly, and the loop of hose sticking out just a little. The butt plate piece has 3 more M3 12mm thin cap screws. Everything should sit nice and flush, and this just seals it up neatly. The magstop piece has this ridge on the rear end, and that sits underneath this curved lip. The forward edge has a hole for an M3 12mm countersunk screw that holds it in place. And this piece squashes down that slack hose, and the residual slack will sit around the barrel in the front part where there's more room. If we look down the magwell now, we can see it's nice and clear, and the hose does not obstruct at all. And a magazine slides in easily. The foregrip I've used is, I think it's called Python. It's from NF Strike, but any Picatinny foregrip will do the job there. And lastly, the Blastertech Mark II adjustable scar. This has 16 settings, allowing you to dial in whatever rate of twist you want. This is the 16mm version, which of course doesn't fit over the threaded end of the barrel. So I've used Teflon tape to wind around the thread until I've got a nice firm attachment. And that's it. The blaster is complete. And I'll attach the bottle and a magazine so it looks nice. And there we are. Time for a firing demo, I think. Here I am in the backyard. I've got a red dot sight dialed in, and the Blastertech scar is set to 3/16 twist. As you can see, I'm using Worker Gen 3 darts, and I'm firing at about 200 FPS, and the target is 100 feet away. A few darts missed entirely from that mag, so I'll try another one. I'm holding the trigger between shots so that I can keep an eye on the pusher feeding darts into the receiver. It all went very smoothly and I had no jams there. A tighter grouping this time, slightly off to the left. The vertical spread might indicate some variability in the FPS. So there you have it. That's Naroda's Bullpup, a fully 3D printed, Supercore powered, semi-automatic, bottle-on HPA blaster. Hopefully COVID-19 restrictions will be ending soon and I'll be able to use this one out on the field before too long. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you're building one of these for yourself, then I hope you find it useful. Please leave any comments or questions below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.